had a surprise this week. Last week I put out a little poll asking what my audience is interested in seeing from me, and I had 4 questions or 4 choices. By far the most popular one was about mixed media projects. So that kind of surprised me. Now, I think I made a mistake because I should have added all of the above or glue book, and so I might do another one in a little while. But I thought today, just based on that, I would do a mixed media project. Mixed media is not my primary medium. I'm a painter primarily. Today I'm doing a mixed media project. I have a new set of acrylic paints that I bought a little while ago and haven't had a chance to use them yet. And I am really excited about getting them out and getting them going. I think this is going to be a fairly simple project, but something that is easy to do. All you need would be some acrylic paints, and you can use the craft paints that you can buy at a hobby store. They work just fine. And then any kind of image you find in a magazine. To begin with, I'm going to just show you my new painting set, and then we'll get started on the project. This unassuming little black box is the case for my new paint set. And I'll be honest, I bought it partly because I love this kind of box. But when I open it up, this is what it contains. So there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 small paint tubes and a whole bunch of brushes. It has a mixing palette here, and I'm just going to pull this out. It comes with a bunch of brush sizes, an eraser, a pencil sharpener, a palette knife, and a pencil. Now, I don't know if I'll keep these trays. This one, I'm not sure. This is kind of handy, but this one, I'm going to take all these out because I know that you can't be this neat when you paint. And so trying to do that will just be kind of frustrating. So this has to go. It also thereby gives me lots more room. Now, I don't think I want this on. So I'm popping these out of here first. And I don't need palette paper, which I do have, because I've got this and I'm going to use it. And I'm hoping that it's glossy. It feels like it's glossy enough that even if paint dries a little bit around the edges, it'll be easy to peel off or scrape off. Okay, so there's my colors. I'll just get rid of this. The other thing I need is water. This is my trusty painting jar. You can see that it's had lots of activity, mostly watercolor. So that's one thing that you need for this project. Another is tissue. This is the handiest kind to have. I like to keep a painting rag handy because you just never know. And I don't like having a lot of junk on my hands. Like, I can't finger paint because it irritates me. So I like to have something nearby that I can paint with or wipe with. I've also got scissors. This is kind of up to you, whether depending on what kind of things you want to put in your project. So I'm going to start with this brush, which is a 3/4 inch brush. This brand is called Royal Langnickel, but you can buy brushes like this. I have a whole bunch of them. So I bought, for example, this came from Michael's. These are not expensive brushes, and that's a good thing because acrylic tends to, if you're not really on it, they have a, let's say they have a shelf life. They just don't last forever because acrylic, if it dries at all ever, it's going to clog up your brush. What I want to do here, I need a little bit more space, obviously. That's not going to work. So I'm going to just push this back as far as I can go and everything with it. That's a little bit out of the way now. And today I'm using this book, and the brand name is Nota. It has beautiful paper, and it really is resistant to all kinds of things. So I've tried different things on it. Some of this is like crayon. This is water-soluble crayon. This is paint and pan pastels. And so it actually works really well. A little bit of this soaked through with because I put so much water on this crayon. I've done a little bit of mixed media here, for example. But today what I thought I would do is just start a new page. And the nice thing about this book too is that it opens flat. So if I wanted to, I could paint all the way across. I don't think I'm going to do that today because I want to keep this a little bit shorter. But here's a piece that I thought I would use because we're just past daffodil season here. And I thought, okay, I don't have a lot of opportunities to use big pieces because generally I'm working in a glue book or, you know, just smaller things. I've got sketchbooks and whatnot, and I want to do actually more of this kind of stuff and just kind of haven't got around to it and been preoccupied with other things. That painting I showed you earlier, for example, I just entered into a national competition. So I hope it wins, basically, but I hope it does well. So, you know, I'm preoccupied with stuff like that and creating new things for my stores and which, to be honest, I've taken a little break from just because I needed to have kind of a rest and reset. I just wet my brush. I'm going to put my water up here where you won't be able to see it, but it's a little bit handier for me. And the first thing I'm going to do is make some decisions. So in this picture, we have this sort of blue-gray going into purple, this terracotta color, which almost becomes a cold color over here. Warm green, warm brown. These are kind of warm greens. This is fairly neutral green. Then we have this warm color here. And then this is like a hot color because it's so bright and so vibrant. So when I look at this, I like to think, okay, how can I make the colors blend together but not clash? And so what I want to do is make a high contrast. So when I think about high contrast, I can look at the color wheel, and the primary colors are red, yellow, and blue. And so if I want high contrast, I could put red or blue here, and it'll be high contrast. But I could also put purple. I could put, if I went towards green, I could do something like this bright emerald green, which wouldn't be as high a contrast as, say, this blue. So I get to make some choices here. I can also go with a blue like this, which is ultramarine blue, and mix it with a crimson red like this and get a sort of a dark purple, or a vermilion, which is almost an orangey, and get a different color of purple. Now, there are lots of other ways I could mix things together, but I'm going to start with this, and I think white. So this is titanium white, and these are little bottles, and of course as soon as they're done I will have to replace them with other tubes of paint. And most acrylic paint comes in larger tubes. So I bought this as sort of for traveling because I always have high hopes of doing painting projects when I travel. So I take all kinds of art supplies and frequently never use them because I have such a large curiosity about things that when I travel, I want to sightsee and I want to explore and I want to go to the beach, and you know, so I end up really not doing too much art after all. And the other thing I think is too that sometimes you have to take a break from what's your sort of normal work and just clear your head and that sort of thing. So I'm mixing some white into this blue, and I'm not mixing it thoroughly so that it's a light blue because I want a little bit of mix of color. And I'm just going to paint the background here. Now there's one thing to know about these kind of colors is like acrylic paint, is that it's actually fairly transparent. Some much more transparent than others. So this kind of blue is coming up quite transparent. Here's how you can tell. You can see a lot through it. And by that I mean you can see the streaks in the paint. I just put a little water on there because I want the paint to go a little farther. And to do that you can just water it down a little bit. Now I should put something in here because see, I forgot that this had a torn corner and it went underneath. What happens is if you paint off the edge and it gets on the page below, they stick together. And I've had to actually pry some of them apart. I could do other things with this, like a lot of this middle part is going to be covered up though. So I'm going to just, I should have thought of that sooner, because I don't really need to fill in a lot of this part, because I'm going to put those daffodils right in the middle there. And same applies here, right down the center. I guess I don't really need to paint that. And once the paint has sunk into the paper, it's not movable. But if it's still on top and wet, then it's not a problem to move it. Now with mixed media, it's kind of the sky's the limit, because the media is anything you want. Like if I wanted to go outside and cut some grass and glue it down here, that would be perfectly fine mixed media look. All kinds of paper, you can use all kinds of things that add color. I was going to say paints, but there's also inks and chalks. You can use watercolor, you can use crayon, you can use pencil crayon, you can use pen, stencils. Okay, so all I want to do now is just fill in where the white shows through. Now that's going to take almost no time at all to dry. In fact, up here it's already completely dry. Since I mentioned using stencils, I am going to get some out here. I came across a whole bunch at the dollar store one day, and I thought, oh, this is a find. So something like this is pretty cute. The flowers against the flowers might be a bit much, but that's fun. I also have these ones, and these ones are actually peel and stick. So if I wanted to do something where I don't want it to move, I could use some of those. But you know, I'm kind of leaning towards one of these patterns. I think my daughter gave me this. She buys stuff, tries it, then decides she doesn't use it or whatever, and then gives it to me. Okay, so here I want to use, I think I'll use white, unless I have a better idea. I could use black. What would I like best? I think I'm going to use white, but I'm not going to use it all over. And I put it in a new little pan here because it will have blue in it if I put it back in there, which wouldn't be a big deal, but if I want a bit of contrast. Now, as fun as this is, I've already used a bunch of this white paint, and I've only used like a couple of blobs. So you can tell that those little tubes aren't going to go very far unless I was just doing really fine, tiny work, which I don't really do that much of. So I'm going to put some of this in here, and then I'm going to water it down a bit so that it's a little bit more like a whitewash. And let's see what we get. This is a first time for me, so never done this before. If you haven't done it before either, well, that's an interesting feature. It puddles. I guess it's not too surprising when there's that much water in it. Well, I might as well continue it. So obviously using extra water was not the best idea. Let's see what happens if I just use the plain paint. I think it's still going to sort of catch underneath. Well, it's a cool effect. It wasn't really what I had in mind, but you know what? This is a fun project, and it's trial and error anyway, so what difference does it make? And I'm going to just go a little bit around the edge so it's almost like a frame for the flowers. I just wanted to try this stencil idea. So obviously the better way to go would be to sponge it on and use, you know, you could certainly use the paint. You could also use ink, which might work even better as long as it's not too sloppy. It's actually kind of cool. I like it. All right, I'm going to just leave that to dry because it needs to. Okay, I went over to the sink and washed this off because I don't like having mucky supplies. This is not dry yet, but I am going to do something to it first before I do anything else. So I'm just going to put this over to the side. There's quite a bit of water on that right now, so it'll probably be a little while. Or I could just go like this and dab some of the moisture off, since it won't really make much difference to the look, and then it'll dry faster. I want to use up this white paint because I can't really put it back in the tube. And I really don't like wasting my supplies, although sometimes you just have to. Just some streaks like this, I think. Will it improve things? Who knows? We'll find out. Okay, now this needs to dry some more, now that I put more paint on it, as you can see. And while that's happening, I'm going to do some distressing on this. So the question is, what color to use? I think I'm going to go with the walnut stain. Do I need to do this? Absolutely not. However, since this is mixed media, I thought I'd mix up some media and just put a little bit of a darker edge around this. Will it help it stand out from the back? I guess, well, we'll see. I think so, a little bit. If it doesn't, we can do other things and just see what happens. And that's the fun about just experimenting. If you're wondering where I got this fabulous picture of the daffodils, I went to a used bookstore and bought gardening books that had great illustrations in them and photographs, and just cut them apart because, you know, I hate cutting apart a book, but if it's a used book that I'm not going to use for its purpose, like growing daffodils, then I'm kind of okay with it. Now there's two ways that I could attach this. I could either use glue like this, or like this, or I could use matte gel like this, which is basically an acrylic paint that dries clear. So I could stick that on, I could paint over it as well, and to get the same kind of finish. But today I think I'm just going to use glue. As far as gluing this down, I'm not going to use matte medium because it's a bit messier, and I'm not into making a mess today. What I want to do is make sure the edges all get down. And okay, here's another thought. I could glue this down, put it on, and then go over it with matte medium, which would stick the edges down. Instead, I'm going to use this glue and take it right off the edges so that it'll take the edges down anyway. And I'll put some in the middle, of course. And let's see, I think I better open this up a bit. Oh, come on. So this should hold all those little pointy edges down. And by the way, I cut this out by hand. I just, when I got those materials, I just sat and, you know, watch TV in the evening or whatever. When I was relaxing, I would do all this fussy cutting. And then that's why I have so much of it, because I spent a whole winter doing it, basically. Not this past winter, but the previous one. Okay, I'll just get that out of the way, and then we'll take this. Sometimes glue dries, like glue stick glue dries so fast that it's getting dry before you're finished. I think that's what happened there. I think that's kind of cool. Now, you could absolutely leave it like that, but I think I want more contrast. So I'm going to get out my little palette again. And because I sprayed everything, they're still moist. I'm going to put some black paint in here and get out a tiny brush, which is this one. It's number 3. All brushes have numbers on them. The good ones do anyway. And then the number corresponds to the size. So what I'm gonna do is wherever I see a little dark patch, I'm gonna darken it up with black so that the shadows are more intense. put some on the stems because this is just mixed media. With mixed media, it's funny because you can do so many things, and especially if a piece of work doesn't need to have any meaning. I could add words, I could add textures, I could add pieces of paper from old books and magazines. I could just, I mean, it's really endless. In a way, now that I think about it, it almost is one reason why I don't do a lot of it, because it's sort of too much to think about sometimes. But yeah, but there's like I said, there's just endless scope for it. So you might say, well, this doesn't really add anything, or does it? You know, if that's your question. Does adding black do anything? It's the eye of the beholder. If you think it jazzes it up, do it. If you don't do it. If it's something that you really like, just try it. It's really endless what you can do. I'm going to just leave it at that because, like I say, I could go on and on. This is just sort of a demonstration of random ideas that you could incorporate all kinds of things. I encourage you to just try stuff. Like if I wanted to, I could get out my pencil crayons or markers or, you know, you name it. I've got gold paint, I've got glitter paint, I've got all kinds of things. I've got colored inks, and there's lots of pages in this book, so I could do all kinds of things. Several people messaged me and said, you know, we'd love to see more about decor, about travels and cooking and sewing and other sort of creative projects. For example, this one, which I'm doing now. I'm not going to broaden it too much, but I think you'll find that there will be lots of creative inspiration. So please subscribe to my channel and click the little bell so you get the notifications when I have a new video. And click the thumbs up. That's the like button, and it helps the algorithm to tell people it's likable. And please leave a comment because I love to get your comments. And I'll see you next time.